The sky above Prime had not been blue for 30 years. Smoke and ash covered everything. The great cities that once touched the clouds now lay in ruin. Fires burned across the horizon, and the screams of the dying had long since faded into silence. Ambassador stood on the balcony of the last standing government building. His massive frame cast a long shadow in the dim light. Like all, he was built for war. His species had evolved on a world of volcanoes and crushing gravity. Their bones were dense as metal. Their muscles could crush stone. For 10,000 years, no species in the galaxy had dared to challenge them. Until the Harkin Dominion came. Look down at the evacuation ships filling the landing zone below. Mothers carried children through the smoke. Soldiers missing limbs helped each other walk. The proud warrior race of the galaxy had been reduced to refugees on their own world. 800 million. That was all that remained of his people. 30 years ago, there had been 12 billion. The door behind him opened. His aide, a young female named, entered with a tablet in her hands. Her eyes were red from crying, but her voice was steady. Ambassador, the Galactic Assembly has responded to our plea. Did not turn around. He already knew what she would say. They express their deepest sympathies, read from the tablet. The coalition offers thoughts and prayers. The Republic suggests we negotiate a peaceful surrender. Her voice cracked. The Dominion has closed their borders to all refugees. Closed his eyes. He had sent messages to 47 species. He had begged. He had pleaded. He had offered everything his dying world had left. Not a single ship would come. What about the Galactic Council itself? He asked. Hesitated. Says the Assembly cannot interfere in regional conflicts. He says it would set a dangerous precedent. Regional conflict. Almost laughed. The complete destruction of a species was a regional conflict to them. He understood, of course. The Harkin Dominion was too powerful. Their fleet numbered over 10,000 warships. They had conquered 60 systems in the past century. No single species wanted to face them alone, and no alliance was willing to form. It was easier to watch the die. There is one more response, said quietly. Finally turned. Something in her voice was different. Who? Earth. For a moment did not recognize the name. Then he remembered. A small blue planet on the edge of the galaxy. The humans. A young species that had only discovered faster-than-light travel 200 years ago. They were barely a footnote in galactic records. What did they say? Looked at the tablet, her brow furrowed in confusion. They say they are sending help, a ship called the Pale Horse. A ship, repeated, one ship. That is all the message says. Turned back to the burning horizon. One ship, against 10,000. The humans were either brave or foolish, probably both. But they were the only ones who answered. In the great chamber of the Galactic Assembly received the same news. The tall, thin leader of the Assembly read the human message twice. Then he laughed. One ship, he said to the other around him. The humans are sending one ship to fight the Harkin Dominion. The chamber filled with quiet laughter. The ambassador shook his head in pity. The representative made a gesture that meant foolishness in his culture. Perhaps we should warn them, the delegate suggested. They are young. They do not understand what they are facing. Let them learn, replied. Every species must discover its place in the galaxy. The humans will learn theirs soon enough. The assembly moved on to other business. The fate of them was already decided in their minds. It was sad, yes, tragic even, but it was not their concern. On the bridge of the Harkin flagship, Supreme Commander received a report from his scouts. A human vessel had departed from Earth. It was moving toward space at high speed. Was a veteran of 100 campaigns. He had burned worlds and broken empires. They were his greatest conquest, but they were not yet complete. A few 100 million still lived. That would not last. One ship, his tactical officer reported. No escort, no support fleet. It appears to be traveling alone. Studied the sensor data. The ship was not large by warship standards. It had no obvious weapons. Its design was simple, almost plain. The humans seek to play hero, said. How noble, how pointless. Should we intercept it, Supreme Commander? No, let it come. Let the whole galaxy see what happens to those who interfere with the Dominion. He smiled coldly. We will destroy it in front of the. Let that be their final hope, burning in the void. His officers laughed and returned to their duties. The human ship was not even worth worrying about. On Prime, received an update. The human vessel would arrive in 3 days. He did not know what one ship could do against an armada. He did not know why the humans had answered when no one else would. But for the first time in 30 years, he felt something he had forgotten. Hope. It was small, it was fragile, it made no logical sense. But it was there. He looked up at the smoke-filled sky and whispered a prayer to gods he had stopped believing in long ago. He prayed that the humans knew something the rest of the galaxy did not. He prayed that this ship, this pale horse, was more than it appeared. Because if it was not, his people would be extinct within the month. And the galaxy would watch in silence, just as it always had. Far across the stars, the pale horse moved through the darkness of space. It made no sound. It sent no messages. It simply traveled, steady and certain, toward a war that had already been lost. On its bridge, a human admiral named sat in his command chair and studied the reports from Prime. He saw the death counts. He saw the burning cities. He saw 800 million people waiting to die. His face showed no emotion. His hands did not shake. He had seen such reports before. He pressed a button on his chair and spoke to his crew. All hands, this is the Admiral. We arrive in 72 hours. I want all systems ready, all personnel at full alert. He paused. They called for help. We answered. That is what we do. He released the button and leaned back in his chair. The pale horse moved through the empty space between stars. From the outside, it looked almost ordinary. Its hull was dark gray, smooth, without decoration. There were no visible weapons, no fighter bays, no missile tubes. It looked more like a cargo ship than a warship. But looks could be deceiving. Admiral walked through the corridors of his ship. He had commanded the pale horse for 15 years. In that time, he had deployed it only twice. Both times, wars that had lasted decades ended within days. No one in the Galactic Assembly knew this ship existed. It appeared in no human fleet records. If you searched every database on Earth, you would find nothing. The pale horse was humanity's deepest secret, and intended to keep it that way. He entered the tactical center where his senior officers waited. Captain stood at the main display, her sharp eyes studying the enemy fleet positions. Lieutenant Minu sat at the weapons console, his face calm and focused. Doctor worked at a separate station, running numbers that only she understood. Report, said as he took his position. Captain pulled up a holographic display. 10,000 red dots filled the screen, surrounding a single blue planet. The Harkin Dominion has positioned their entire invasion fleet around Prime, she said. 10,400 warships, mostly heavy cruisers and battleships. Their flagship, the Burning Throne, is at the center of the formation. Defenses. They have approximately 300 ships remaining, all damaged. Most are running on emergency power. Paused. They cannot last another week. Studied the display. The numbers were overwhelming. Any normal fleet would need at least 15,000 ships to have a chance against the Dominion. They had asked the galaxy for help and received nothing. Then they had asked humanity. Lieutenant said, status of conventional weapons. Minu looked up from his console. He was a quiet man who rarely spoke more than necessary. All systems ready, Admiral. Precision targeting is calibrated. We can disable enemy vessels at a rate of approximately 50 per minute. Doctor, what about Project Silence? turned from her station. She was the one who had designed the system. It had taken her 20 years and the resources of 3 secret research facilities. Fully operational, field radius can extend to cover the entire battle zone. Duration is unlimited as long as our power core holds. Nodded, Project Silence was the reason the Pale Horse existed. It was not a weapon in the traditional sense. It did not destroy. It did not kill. It simply removed the ability to fight. And that made it more terrifying than any bomb ever built. The Admiral walked to the observation window and looked out at the stars. He remembered the day humanity first made contact with alien life. They had been so excited, so hopeful. They thought the galaxy would be full of friends and wonders. Instead, they found a universe of predators. Species that conquered and enslaved. Empires that burned worlds for profit. Civilizations that had been at war for longer than humans had existed. The galaxy was not a community. It was a jungle. Humanity had smiled and nodded and pretended to be harmless. They had built a small public fleet and played the role of the young, foolish newcomers. Let the galaxy underestimate them. Let them think humans were weak. Meanwhile, in secret facilities hidden across a dozen moons, humanity prepared. The Pale Horse was the result of that preparation. Captain joined at the window. Admiral, permission to speak freely. Granted. The crew is ready, but some of them are wondering why we are doing this. They are strangers. We owe them nothing. Was silent for a long moment, then he spoke. 200 years ago, when humanity first reached the stars, we found ourselves alone. Every species we met saw us as either prey or competition. We had no allies, no friends, no one to help us when we faced extinction. He turned to face his captain. We survived because we learned to help ourselves, but we also made a promise. We said that if we ever had the power to help others, we would not turn away. We would not be like the rest of the galaxy. Nodded slowly. So we helped them because no one helped us. We help them because it is right, because someone has to be willing to stand up when everyone else sits down. Looked back at the stars. And because humanity must never become like those who abandoned us. In another part of the ship, Lieutenant Minu visited the memorial room. It was a small chamber near the engine core, filled with holographic panels displaying names. Thousands of names. The fallen from humanity's hidden wars. Minu had added names to this wall. Friends, comrades, people who had died so that humanity could survive in a hostile universe. He stopped at one name, Park, his sister. She had died during the Vex incident, a conflict that officially never happened. A small empire had tried to claim human colony worlds. They had expected easy prey. They had been wrong. The Pale Horse had been deployed for the first time. Within 48 hours, the Vex Empire's entire military was floating dead in space. Not destroyed, not killed, simply disabled, unable to fight. The Vex had surrendered immediately. Their leaders could not understand what had happened. Their ships were intact. Their crews were alive, but none of their weapons worked. None of their engines responded. It was like fighting a god that chose not to kill you, but simply took away your ability to resist. Minu touched his sister's name on the wall. She had been on one of the colony ships the Vex had attacked before the Pale Horse arrived. She never saw humanity's victory. But she would have been proud. We are going to save them, Minu whispered to the names on the wall. The 800 million people, we are going to save them all. Back on the bridge, Doctor ran her final calculations. Project Silence worked by generating a quantum field that interfered with specific energy patterns. It could identify weapons systems, targeting computers and engine cores. Once identified, it disrupted them at the molecular level. The result was elegant in its simplicity. Weapons fused solid, computers burned out, engines went cold, everything else remained untouched. Life support kept working. Gravity generators stayed on. crews survived. It was the perfect weapon for a species that wanted to end wars, not lives. Had built it because she believed violence was a disease. The galaxy was sick with it. Every species solved their problems with destruction. Bigger weapons, stronger ships, more death. Humanity would offer a different solution. The pale horse dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of space. Immediately, alerts filled the bridge. Enemy contacts, thousands of them. Admiral took his seat and activated the main display. The Harkin Dominion fleet turned toward them like a swarm of angry insects. 10,000 ships ready to kill. The communications officer spoke. "Admiral, we are being hailed by the Harkin flagship." On screen, the face of Supreme Commander appeared. He was smiling. "So the humans have come to die with the, how touching, how foolish." His smile widened. "Your single ship against my armada. This will not be a battle, it will be an execution." Admiral's expression did not change. "This is your only warning," he said calmly. "Withdraw from this system. There will be no second offer." Laughed, the sound was cruel and confident. "You dare threaten me? I have conquered 60 worlds. I have burned civilizations older than your species, and you come here with one ship and expect me to run." Leaned forward slightly. "Yes." The transmission ended. On the surface of Prime, Ambassador watched the human ship appear on his sensors. His heart sank. It was so small, so alone. Against 10,000 warships. He had dared to hope. Now that hope felt like madness. But something in the human admiral's voice stayed with him. That calm certainty, that complete lack of fear. Had faced death many times, he knew what fear looked like. The human had shown none. Perhaps, he thought, the humans knew something the rest of the galaxy did not. The void of space around Prime had never been so crowded. 10,000 Harkin warships hung in the darkness like a cloud of metal and death. Their weapons were powered. Their crews were hungry for blood. They had spent 30 years breaking the greatest warriors in the galaxy. One human ship would not even be a challenge. It would be entertainment. Supreme Commander stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Burning Throne. He watched the tiny human vessel on his display and felt nothing but contempt. The ship was not even running. It just floated there, motionless, as if waiting to die. "Send 500 ships," ordered. "Destroy it slowly. I want them to watch their last hope burn." His fleet admiral nodded and relayed the command. 500 heavy cruisers broke formation and moved toward the human vessel. Their weapons charged with a sound like thunder. Their targeting systems locked on. On the surface of Prime, Ambassador watched through a long-range sensor display. Around him, the last survivors of his species gathered. Children held their parents' hands. Soldiers too wounded to fight stood beside civilians. They all watched the same thing. One small ship facing 500 warships. "They are brave," whispered, "foolish but brave." Stood beside him. "Perhaps they will retreat. There is no shame in running from impossible odds." But the human ship did not retreat. It did not move at all. The 500 Harkin cruisers opened fire. The darkness of space lit up with weapons fire, plasma beams, particle cannons, missile swarms. Everything the Harkin had was thrown at the single human vessel. The barrage was so intense that the ship disappeared behind a wall of explosions. On the Burning Throne smiled, "And so ends the human intervention." But when the fire cleared, his smile vanished. The human ship was still there, undamaged. Its shields glowed faintly with absorbed energy, but there was not a scratch on its hull. "Impossible," his tactical officer said. "That barrage would have destroyed a." Leaned forward, "Hit them again, all weapons. Do not stop until there is nothing left." The 500 ships fired again, and again, and again. For 10 minutes they poured everything they had into the human vessel. The combined firepower could have cracked a moon. When they finally stopped, the human ship remained, silent, patient, waiting. On the pale horse, Captain checked her displays. Shields holding at 94%. Their weapons cannot penetrate our defenses. Admiral nodded. The ship's shield technology was another of humanity's secrets. It did not just block energy. It absorbed it, converted it, stored it. The more the enemy attacked, the stronger the shields became. They are scared now, Lieutenant Minu observed. He watched the enemy formation on his screen. The 500 ships had stopped firing. They were hesitating. Opened a communication channel to the Harkin flagship. Supreme Commander, you have tested our defenses. You have failed. This is my final offer. Withdraw your fleet from this system. Leave thee in peace. Do this and you may go home. His face appeared on the screen. The confidence was gone. In its place was something recognized, anger born from fear. You think your shields make you invincible. I have 10,000 ships. I will drown you in fire until your shields collapse. Then I will tear your ship apart piece by piece. You were warned, said. He cut the transmission and turned to Doctor. Activate Project Silence. Target the attacking formation. Non-lethal parameters. His fingers moved across her console. Deep within the ship, systems that had no name in any galactic database came to life. Energy flowed through circuits designed in secret laboratories. Calculations processed through computers that should not exist. Project Silence active, announced. Deploying field now. Nothing visible happened. There was no beam of light, no wave of energy, no sound. But across the attacking formation, 500 warships went dark. Their weapons stopped charging. Their engines fell silent. Their targeting computers burned out in showers of sparks. Lights flickered and died. Only emergency systems remained online, keeping crews alive but unable to fight. In a single moment, 500 warships became 500 helpless hulks drifting in space. On the burning throne, alarms screamed. Reports flooded in from every corner of the fleet. Sir, the attacking force has gone dark. They are reporting total weapons failure. Engines are not responding. They are adrift. This is impossible. Nothing can disable weapons without destroying the ship. Stared at his display. 500 of his ships floated uselessly in space. Their crews were alive, sending panicked messages, but they could not fight. They could not run. They could do nothing. What had the humans done? Send more ships, he ordered. Send 1,000, send 2,000, overwhelm them with numbers. His officers exchanged nervous glances but obeyed. 1,000 ships moved forward, then 2,000, then 3,000. The largest attack force the Dominion had ever assembled against a single target. They never had a chance. The pale horse deployed its field again and again. Each pulse reached further, touched more ships. Cruisers went dark. Battleships fell silent. Carriers lost all power to their weapons. In less than 5 minutes, 3,000 more Harkin warships were disabled. On Prime, Ambassador watched in disbelief. His display showed thousands of enemy ships drifting without power. They were not destroyed. There were no explosions, no debris. They simply stopped working. What is happening? Asked. What are the humans doing? Shook his head slowly. I do not know, but whatever it is beautiful. Admiral opened another channel to the remaining Harkin fleet. His voice was calm and clear. Your weapons exist because we allow them to. Your ability to make war is a privilege we can take away. You have seen what we can do. You have seen that we do not kill. We simply end your capacity for violence. He paused. 7,000 ships remain under your command. Withdraw them now or they will join your comrades, drifting, helpless, unable to fire a single shot. On the burning throne, Supreme Commander listened to the human's words. His hands shook. His mind raced. In 30 years of war, he had never faced anything like this. He had fought enemies who killed. He had destroyed fleets that tried to destroy him. War was simple. You killed or you died. But this was different. This was a power that did not kill. It simply removed your ability to fight. It was not war. It was something beyond war. It was extinction of a different kind. Sir, his tactical officer said quietly, perhaps we should consider. No, his voice was hard. We do not retreat. We do not surrender. We are the Harkin Dominion. We have never lost. He turned to his fleet commander. All ships, everything we have, attack the human vessel, destroy it at any cost. Sir, our weapons may not. I do not care. Ram them if you have to. Crash our ships into their hull. I will not be defeated by one ship. The order went out. 7,000 warships surged forward. The largest attack in the history of the Dominion. Every weapon, every ship, every hope they had left. The pale horse sat motionless in the center of the storm. Admiral watched them come. 7,000 ships charging toward certain failure. They chose poorly, Captain said. They chose pride over survival, replied. It is a common choice. He turned to full deployment, disable them all, but keep it clean. I want every crew member alive when this is over. Nodded and activated the final sequence. The quantum field expanded outward like a silent wave. It touched every ship in its path. It found every weapon, every engine, every system that could be used for war. And it turned them off. 7,000 ships fell silent in a matter of minutes. An entire armada reduced to floating metal. Crews screaming into dead radios. Commanders staring at dark consoles. The Battle of Prime was over. Silence filled the space around Prime. 10,000 warships drifted without power, without weapons, without hope. The greatest military force the galaxy had ever seen had been reduced to floating metal in less than an hour. And not a single shot had been fired in return. On the bridge of the burning throne, Supreme Commander sat in his command chair. The lights were dim. The screens were dark. Only emergency power kept the life support running. Around him, his officers worked frantically at dead consoles, trying to restore systems that would never respond again. Sir, weapons are completely fused. The targeting computers are burned out at the molecular level. Our engines are cold. We cannot repair them. Did not respond. He stared at watching the human ship drift past his fleet like a predator surveying its prey. Except this predator did not kill. It simply took away his teeth and claws and left him alive to know his own helplessness. It was worse than death. Death at least had honor. On the pale horse, Admiral observed the drifting fleet. Lieutenant Minu worked at his console, tracking each disabled ship, ensuring none had somehow escaped the field. All targets neutralized, Minu reported. 10,400 ships, all crews alive. Life support functioning on all vessels. Captain shook her head slowly. In my 30 years of service, I have never seen anything like this. A fleet of this size, defeated without a single death. Turned to her. That is the point, Captain. The goal was never to destroy them. It was to make destruction impossible. He stood and walked to the center of the bridge. Open a channel, all frequencies. I want every ship in this system to hear me. The communications officer nodded. Channel open, Admiral. Spoke clearly, his voice carrying across the void to 10,000 silent ships. This is Admiral of the human vessel Pale Horse. Your fleet has been disabled. Your weapons no longer function. Your engines will not respond. You cannot fight. You cannot run. You can only listen. He paused, letting the words sink in. But you are alive, every single one of you. We did not come here to kill. We came here to end a war. Your leaders chose violence. We chose to take that violence away. In the depths of the disabled Harkin fleet, crews gathered around emergency speakers. They listened to the human's voice in shock and confusion. They had expected death. They had prepared for destruction. This was something else entirely. Rescue ships will arrive within hours, continued. You will be returned to you will see your families again. You will live long lives, but you will go home knowing this. Your ability to wage war exists only because we allow it. On Prime, Ambassador listened to the transmission with tears running down his face. Around him, the survivors of his species stared at the sky. Some wept, some laughed, some simply stood in silence, unable to process what had happened. For 30 years, they had watched their people die. For 30 years, they had begged the galaxy for help and received nothing. Now, in a single hour, a ship they had never heard of had ended their nightmare. Without killing anyone. Turn 2. Do you understand what we have witnessed? The humans did not just defeat the Harkin. They showed us a new way to end conflicts. Nodded slowly. No death, no destruction, just the removal of the ability to harm. The galaxy believes that war can only be won through killing. The humans have proven that wrong. Across the galaxy in the great chamber of the Galactic Assembly watched the battle recordings in stunned silence. He had laughed when the humans sent one ship. He had called them foolish. He had expected to watch them die. Now he watched the most powerful fleet in known space floating helplessly in the void, and he felt something he had not felt in centuries. Fear. How is this possible? The ambassador asked. What weapon could do this? It is not a weapon, said slowly. At least not as we understand weapons. It does not destroy, it simply removes the capacity for violence. The representative leaned forward. If the humans can do this to the Harkin fleet, they can do it to anyone. They could disable our defenses without warning. They could leave us helpless. Silence filled the chamber. Every species represented there suddenly understood the same terrible truth. Humanity had just revealed itself as the most dangerous species in the galaxy, not because they could destroy, but because they could choose not to destroy and still win. Back at Prime, Supreme Commander finally moved. He rose from his chair and walked to the emergency airlock. His officers watched but did not stop him. They knew what he intended. The airlock opened and stepped out onto the hull of his powerless flagship. His suit protected him from the vacuum, but nothing could protect him from what he saw. Ships as far as his eyes could see, all dark, all drifting. The pride of the Harkin Dominion reduced to floating coffins without a single body inside. A small craft approached his position. A human shuttle sent from the Pale Horse. It docked gently against his flagship's hull and a door opened. Admiral stepped out, wearing a simple environmental suit. He walked across the hull to stand before the Supreme Commander. You could have killed us, said. His voice was empty, broken. You had the power to destroy every ship in my fleet. Nodded yes. Then why didn't you? The human admiral looked at the field of disabled ships surrounding them. Because killing you would not end this war, it would only pause it. Your government would build more ships. They would send more soldiers. They would seek revenge. The cycle would continue. He turned to face directly. But if your soldiers go home alive, if they tell their families and friends what they witnessed, if they spread the word that humanity can end any war without death, then something changes. Fear of destruction can be overcome. Fear of being made helpless cannot. Stared at him. You are not just defeating us. You are making it impossible for us to ever fight again. No, we are showing you that fighting is pointless. You can rebuild your fleet. You can create new weapons, but we will simply take them away again, and again, and again, until you understand that violence is no longer a solution. The Supreme Commander lowered his head. In 30 years of war, he had never been beaten. He had destroyed worlds. He had broken civilizations. Now he stood on the hull of his dead flagship, facing a species he had dismissed as weak and young, and he understood that everything he believed about power was wrong. What happens now? He asked quietly. Now you go home. You tell your leaders what you saw. You tell them that if they ever threaten another species again, we will return. And next time we will not leave your fleet intact. We will disable every ship in your entire civilization, every military base, every weapons factory. You will be unable to harm anyone. Turned to walk back to his shuttle. Peace is not the absence of weapons, Supreme Commander. Peace is the absence of the will to use them. We cannot give you peace, but we can take away your ability to make war. The rest is up to you. He boarded his shuttle and departed, leaving alone on the hull of his broken flagship. Around him, 10,000 ships drifted in eternal silence. And for the first time in his life, the conqueror of 60 worlds wept. Not for his defeat, not for his lost pride, but for the soldiers he had sent to die in a galaxy where none of them had to. On Prime, the people gathered in the ruins of their capital city. Ambassador stood before them, his voice carrying across the crowd. For 30 years we fought alone. For 30 years the galaxy watched us die. Today one species answered our call. One ship ended our suffering. He raised his fist toward the sky. We are not saved because we are strong. We are saved because one species believed that strength should be used to protect, not to destroy. Humanity has shown us a different way, a better way. The crowd roared in response. 800 million, alive because of strangers from a distant world. In the cold void of space, the pale horse turned away from the battlefield and began its long journey home. Its mission was complete. 1 month had passed since the Battle of Prime. The galaxy had not stopped talking about it. In every system, on every world, the same stories were shared. A single human ship had faced 10,000 warships and won, not through destruction, but through something far more terrifying. The humans had simply turned off the enemy's ability to fight. The recordings spread across every network. Species that had never heard of Earth now whispered the name with fear and wonder. Governments that had ignored humanity suddenly requested diplomatic meetings. Military leaders who had dismissed humans as weak now studied their tactics with growing dread. And at the center of it all, the Harkin Dominion faced a choice. Supreme Commander had returned home. He had stood before his government and told them what he had witnessed. He had described the moment when 10,000 ships went dark. He had explained that no weapon, no shield, no defense they possessed could stop what the humans had done. The leaders of the Dominion had listened in silence. Some had wanted to rebuild. Some had wanted revenge, but had shown them the recordings. He had shown them the faces of his soldiers, alive but helpless, drifting in the void. We can build another fleet, had told them. We can create new weapons, but the humans will simply take them away, again and again, until we have nothing left. He had paused, his voice heavy with a truth he had never expected to speak. We cannot win this war, not because we are weaker, but because the humans have made war itself meaningless. 3 days later, the Harkin Dominion announced its unconditional surrender to the people. All occupied territories would be returned. All prisoners would be released. All reparations would be paid. For the first time in its history, the Dominion had lost. And they had not lost a single soldier doing it. On Prime, the reconstruction had begun. Buildings rose from the ashes. Farms were planted in fields that had been. Children played in streets that had known only war for 30 years. Ambassador stood in the ruins of his old office, looking out at the city being rebuilt. The sky was still gray with smoke, but now it was the smoke of construction, not destruction. Life was returning. A shuttle landed in the plaza below, walked down to meet it. The door opened and Admiral stepped out. He wore simple civilian clothes, no uniform, no medals. He looked like any ordinary person. Admiral said, bowing his head, "I did not expect you to return." Smiled slightly. "The pale horse is not needed here anymore. I came as myself." They walked together through the recovering city. People stopped to stare. Some recognized the human from the battle recordings. Others simply sensed that something important was happening. Led to a quiet garden near the edge of the city. Flowers were beginning to bloom among the rubble, life finding a way to return. "I have a question," said as they sat on a broken wall, "one that has troubled me since the battle." "Ask." "Why did you help us? We are strangers, we had nothing to offer you. The galaxy ignored our pleas for 30 years, but you came. One ship, against impossible odds. Why?" Was silent for a moment. He looked at the flowers pushing through the broken stone. 200 years ago, when humanity first reached the stars, we were alone. Every species we met saw us as either threat or prey. We had no allies, no friends. We faced extinction many times in those early years. He turned to face. We survived because we were stubborn, because we refused to die. But we also survived because we made a promise to ourselves. We said that if we ever became powerful, we would not become like those who abandoned us. We would be different. Nodded slowly. You help others because no one helped you. We help others because it is right. Because someone has to be willing to stand when everyone else turns away. Because the galaxy needs proof that power does not have to mean cruelty. The ambassador looked at the human beside him. This small, ordinary-looking creature from a small, ordinary-looking world. The being who had ended a 30-year war without taking a single life. "You have changed everything," said quietly. "The galaxy will never be the same." That is the hope. In the great chamber of the Galactic Assembly, an emergency session had been called. Every species sent their highest representatives. The matter was too important for lesser officials. Stood at the center podium. He looked older than he had a month ago. The weight of what he had witnessed had changed him. "We are here to discuss the formal invitation of humanity to join the Galactic Assembly as a full member," he announced. "Given recent events, this seems not only appropriate but necessary." Murmurs filled the chamber. Some agreed, others were afraid. A species that could disable any fleet at will was not a comfortable neighbor. The human ambassador, a woman named, stood to address the council. "We are honored by the invitation," she said calmly, "but we must decline." Shocked silence filled the chamber. "Decline," repeated. "After what you have done, you would refuse a seat at this table." Smiled. "We are not interested in power over the galaxy. We are interested in peace within it. A seat on your council would give us political influence. That is not what we want." She paused, letting her words settle. "Instead, we propose something else. We call it the Pale Horse Accords, a mutual defense agreement. Any species facing extinction may call upon humanity, and humanity will answer." The chamber erupted in discussion. Species argued among themselves. Some feared this was a trick, others saw it for what it was. "You would make yourselves protectors of the weak?" the representative asked. "We would make ourselves available to those in need, the same way we answered the. And if we refuse, if we reject this proposal?" Smile did not waver. "Then you refuse. The Pale Horse Accords do not require your approval. They require only that someone asks for help." She looked around the chamber at the gathered representatives of 100 species. "We will not rule. We will not conquer. We will not even join your council. But we will be there, waiting in the darkness between stars for anyone who calls out for aid. That is our promise. That is what humanity has become." Back on Earth, in a secret facility orbiting a distant moon, Doctor stood before a holographic display showing Project Silence's technical specifications. Lieutenant Minu stood beside her. They were alone in the room. "You designed this to end wars," Minu said quietly. "Did you ever imagine it would work this well?" Shook her head. "I designed it because I believed violence was a disease. I thought that if we could remove the ability to harm, we could force the galaxy to find other solutions." She touched the display, watching the energy patterns flow. "But I never imagined we would actually use it. I hoped we would never have to. We saved 800 million people. Yes, smiled sadly, and we terrified a galaxy in the process. I wonder which will matter more in the end. The pale horse drifted in the darkness beyond Earth's solar system. Its mission was complete. Its crew had been rotated out for rest and recovery. Only a skeleton team remained aboard, keeping the ship ready. Admiral stood on the observation deck, looking out at the stars. He had commanded this ship for 15 years. He had ended 3 conflicts with it. He had saved millions of lives. But he had also revealed humanity's greatest secret. The galaxy now knew what humans could do. They knew that somewhere in the void, a ship waited that could end any war without firing a shot. Some would see this as protection. Others would see it as a threat. Did not know which perspective would win. But he knew one thing. The next time someone called for help, the next time a species faced extinction while the galaxy watched, the pale horse would answer. Because that was what humanity had chosen to be. Not conquerors, not rulers, not destroyers. Protectors. He turned from the window and walked to the bridge. The ship hummed quietly around him, waiting for its next mission. Across the galaxy, species that had once ignored humanity now watched the stars with new eyes. They knew the humans were out there. They knew the ship that ended wars was waiting. Some felt fear, some felt hope, some felt both. And in the deepest reaches of space, the pale horse drifted in silence. Patient, ready, waiting. Because somewhere in the universe, someone always needed saving. And humanity had promised to answer. Always. But its legend had only just begun. And not a single person had died. Perhaps this was not madness at all. The ship that ended wars was coming. And nothing in the galaxy would ever be the same.